You've heard the talk this offseason. How good will Nebraska's wide receivers actually be? We've seen an influx of talented transfers along with experienced true freshmen and sophomores. So in today's video, I'm going to dive deep into this positional room and discuss my concerns, optimism, and everything else in between. So really quick, we have a jam-packed episode today. Make sure to smash that like button if you're excited about Nebraska's receiver room. And hey, hit that subscribe button if you don't want to miss out on daily uploads talking about Nebraska football and Nebraska recruiting this summer. We're on the road to 4,000 subs. Help me hit it by football season. But without further ado, let's jump right into it, talking about Nebraska's receiver room. And like I talked about in the intro, this has been the most hyped up position besides the quarterbacks going into 2024. We saw a bunch of transfers enter the program. Jahmal Banks, Isaiah Neyor, and there's a bunch of talented true sophomore and true freshmen talking about Malachi Coleman, Jaylen Lloyd, Demetrius Bell, a bunch of 4-star, even high 3-star players. So let's just jump into it. Is the hype legit? And the way we should start this off is with the number one receiver, no question about it, for the Cornhuskers, Jahmal Banks. Now, I've sung Jahmal Banks' praises for a very long time since he committed. This guy is the real deal. Nebraska fans need to buy stock right now. He's receiver one. There's no question about it. He will be the starter at receiver X for the Cornhuskers this season. And not only that, I believe he's going to be one of the better receivers in the Big Ten. We're talking about a guy who could potentially have 1,000 yards for Nebraska this year. Last year and the year before, he was at Wake Forest. He totaled for 1,300 yards in 2 years. And this is a guy that if he had better quarterback play last year, I believe he would already be in the NFL. We're talking about a player who is 6'4", 220 pounds, can just go up and get jump balls consistently, has great hands, great route running. There's just so many accolades for this player. He is the real deal, folks. And a lot of people, they don't give him enough credit. We talk about, Isaiah Neyor. We talk about Jaylen Lloyd. We talk about Malachi Coleman. Jahmal Banks is the best receiver on Nebraska's roster. And he's going to continue to build that repertoire with Raiola. He's going to continue to develop as a player. And Nebraska, they've had so much success with transfer receivers. We saw Samori Toure come to Nebraska in 2021, having a 1,000-yard campaign, go off to the NFL. Then Trey Palmer, the very next year in 2022, have a 1,000-yard campaign and go off to the NFL. Jahmal Banks is the next up. He will be, in my opinion, around a third round, even a second-round draft pick. I'm very high on this guy, so watch out for him in 2024. So that's a good way to start things off. Let's go to the wide receiver 2 on this roster, and this is another transfer, Isaiah Neyor. So Isaiah Neyor comes in from Texas. He was with them for 2 years. Before that, he was with Wyoming. And this is a guy that's been hit by the injury bug time and time again in his career. In 2021 with Wyoming, of course, he had 1,000 yards. He was one of the best receivers in the country. He ends up transferring to the Longhorns, and he hasn't played since. He got hit by so many injuries, lower body injuries. And because of that, he transferred to Nebraska this offseason, and there is a big question mark around him. Now, we know how talented he is. He's 6'3". He's very fast. He has great hands. The thing that impressed me the most when watching him in the spring game was his run after catch ability. He would make a grab and run 20, 25 yards after the catch to, put the team in great field position. So again, we know how talented he is. It's just all about staying healthy for him and trusting his body. That was the big note in spring ball, is that, his talent is on display. He's so gifted. He's so skilled. But he's got to trust his lower body. He's got to trust his knees, his ankles, and we got to hope that he stays healthy all year long and does not get hurt. And it was also noted that he has a great connection with Raiola. So I'm very excited about Isaiah Neyor. Again, a very tall receiver, a very speedy receiver. That's what Matt Rhule loves. He got it here with Isaiah Neyor. So those are 2 transfer receivers who I expect to be big in Nebraska's depth chart this year in that receiver room. But let's talk about some of the returning players. And there's a lot of young faces here who are very talented. Jaylen Lloyd, I believe, will be our starter in the slot this year. And again, I love Jaylen Lloyd, man. I think this is actually going to be our second best receiver when it's all said and done in 2024. And he's just such a raw player. We're talking about a guy who really didn't come along until his senior year of high school at Westside in Omaha, Nebraska. He's a player who also runs track. He literally runs a 4.3, even a 4.2, one of the fastest guys on the field in the country, period. And his route running is superb as well. So he can outrun anybody that will line up against him on defense. We know that. But this year, what really is getting me pumped up about Jaylen Lloyd is that he has the full playbook in his arsenal. Last year, he played as a true freshman, and he didn't know the whole playbook. We basically only had to give him deep routes, deep post routes, go routes, because we knew he could do that successfully. And because of that, he had about 240 yards on only 6 catches. I'll do the quick math there. That's 40 yards a catch. So, again, he's a guy who's very experienced running those deep routes, but I'm super excited to see what he can do in the slot. We got to use this guy as a weapon, right? Jet sweeps, get him on a screen, get him on a quick slant, see what he can do with the ball in his hands. Very excited for that. And honestly, I predict he'll have around 700 yards, 6 touchdowns when it's all said and done in this new offense with Glenn Thomas. So very excited about Jaylen Lloyd. And hey, honestly, think that we should try him out there, kick returning the football. We need a weapon there. We need a guy with speed. Jaylen Lloyd absolutely has that. So really feel good about those 3. Those are your 3 starters there at wide receiver. But let's talk about the depth. And let's go first off to Malachi Coleman. Wow, this is a big year for Malachi. Last year he had 140 yards as a true freshman and 1 touchdown. But the thing that really impressed me the most about Malachi Coleman, we know he's a big guy. He's listed at 6'4". We know how fast he is. He runs about a 4.4, 4.3. But the thing that was the best about him was his perimeter blocking. I remember the Michigan State game specifically. He was just laying down pancake blocks in the running game. You feel really good about that when it comes to Malachi. But there's a lot of question marks around him. Again, we know how impressive he is physically, but he got injured after last year's campaign, and he was out all of spring. We did not see him in the spring game, and because of that, I don't believe he's going to start. I think Jaylen Lloyd, I think there's guys who have a leg up over him. And really, there's been some rumors around Malachi Coleman. We've seen a couple cryptic tweets from him that he's going to enter the portal. There's this rumor that if he's not a staple of Nebraska's offense this year, that he might enter the portal. Now, typically, I don't put stock into this stuff. I don't think it matters. I don't think the rumor mill is often true. So I'm not really going to talk about that any further. But I hope this guy stays with the program because he's super talented. He has such a high ceiling. And hopefully he has a big breakout year because he's a fan favorite, guys. He's a kid who's from Lincoln, always been around the Nebraska football program. We're hoping he can break out and be as good as we know he can be. We're talking about a player who I compare a lot to Megatron, Calvin Johnson, because of the way he's built, how tall he is, how great his hands are. So hopefully he has a big year. So Malachi Coleman, they're at wide receiver 4. Let's talk about some of the other depth pieces here in this receiver room. Jaden Doss coming into his second year. Honestly, out of all the talented true freshman receivers we had last year, whether that was Malachi, whether that was Jaylen Lloyd, whether that was Demetrius Bell, I like Jaden Doss the most. The problem with him, though, was that he got injured before the season last year, barely played. I believe he's broke his leg, actually. But he should be in for a big year, another depth piece for Nebraska, do-it-all type of guy. I really feel comfortable with him in the slot. Another guy there in that receiver room is Demetrius Bell. Now, Demetrius Bell was so hyped up in spring practice. He was my number one, my guy, and he got injured. He injured his knee in the spring game, and it looks like he will be out for most of the year, if not all of the year. That is a huge loss for Nebraska, but this depth in the receiver room is really good. Hopefully, it does not impact anything, but Demetrius Bell, man, my heart just hurt because I actually projected Demetrius Bell to start. That's how high I was on that kid, and the fact that he injured his knee that severely is terrible news. But going on to some of the other players in this receiver room, again, it's super deep. We have Isaiah Garcia-Castaneda and Alex Bullock, 2 veterans, 2 senior players who have been around the program a couple times. Again, you feel good about those guys as depth pieces, nothing more than that. And then after that, you have true freshman receivers who also might be in the mix. Ja'Cory Barney balled out in spring ball. He had a really good game in the spring game as well. Another player who, honestly, I could see returning kicks. I could see him, getting in crunch time. I feel really good about Ja'Cory Barney and his future. And besides that, you also have Davon Hall, who played well in spring ball, was an early enrollee, and then Isaiah Morris, who will be getting on campus shortly. So a lot of really talented guys in that receiver room. Who I feel comfortable with. Again, it's a really good mix of old and young, experienced, and just raw talents. And for that reason, man, I really like it. I love the depth. Now, let's get to the bottom line. Again, the depth is the best it has been in years. If Jahmal Banks, for whatever reason were to go down with injury, you'd still feel comfortable with that room. And hey, even if Isaiah Neyor went down, you'd probably still feel comfortable with that room. But it's just got to stay healthy, though. It has to stay healthy because last year, we saw it get injured. We saw Billy Kemp go down. We saw Marcus Washington go down. We saw a bunch of those guys go down. And, despite the fact that I feel good about our depth, I would feel much better if we had our experienced veterans play a lot, guys who produced before like Jahmal Banks. Now, with that being said, what is my grade for this unit? It is going to be a B+. It's all about building that rapport with Raiola, building that connection with him. We're now in the offseason. We will not have fall practice until late July. I expect a lot of these receivers to work with Raiola throughout this downtime, can fly out, work out, catch some balls from him, run routes with him. Again, just to build that connection. Again, that type of work is going to mean dividends when we get to the fall. Now, again, this is one of the better units in the Big Ten, but the reason why I don't have it actually as, an A or an A+ is just because of the fact that I think there's some concern in the injury department with Isaiah Neyor, with Malachi Coleman, with some other guys. That's just a concern. Number two, there's just some inexperience when it comes to the depth. But besides that, again, you feel great about a B+. This is a very solid room, Nebraska fans, and you should be pumped up. So let me know down in the comment section below, which receiver are you most excited about going into 2024? And hey, if you made this far in the video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. And as always, folks, go have a great, go Matt Rhule, and see you in the next one.